Hey, Mark.
Hey.
Thanks for coming back on, everybody. Mark James
Thanks
for
having
part 2 of our discussion. Oh, no, you're very welcome again. Thanks for coming on. So, part 2 of what I wanted to talk to you about, too, is that you are a collector of rocks and fossils and things of that nature because you do have the biology background.
Yes.
And
Earth science.
And earth science. So you brought some things here, and unfortunately for those who are listening at home, you're not going to be able to see these, but we'll do our best to try to describe what we have.
We'll try and get them a little closer to where you can get them a little closer in here. But this is one of my specimens of rock that I like, and they're the quartz family, and the quartz family comes from everything from clear quartz, like this is a crystal with the little baby crystal on the side there, and it's a clear crystal.
Now, is that something that you would buy, or did you find that at like the mining place up in Hidnite?
You can purchase them, you can dig. There are places up in the mountains where you can go and dig for things like this. It just varies. Some things I buy, some things I have dug up over the years. And Hidnite is one place. Another place, there are several mines you can dig in up in, is it Spruce Pine up in the mountains? I think it's up past Asheville. I think it's Spruce Pines. But there are some mines up in the Asheville part of the mountains where you can go digging near Franklin and up in that area.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting if you like to get out and get yourself a little bit dirty. But quite a few of the places will let you come in. Most of them, there's like a slight charge for going in and being able to dig on their property.
There's a lot of quartz around here, right?
A lot of quartz, yes. Quartz is probably one of the most common minerals and rocks that there are. I mean, like granite rock has a lot of quartz in it. When you dig for, if you ever watch any of these gold digging programs, they usually look for quartz veins, and they'll follow a quartz vein because the gold tends to be right up against the quartz veins that are running through. So quartz is something, it's made of silicon.
When you say quartz vein, you mean like a run of quartz? Like there just happens to be a...
Yeah, because back in the day when the earth was forming, you have liquid molten rock, and you'd get a crack in the earth, and the liquid molten rock would squirt up through the crack, and then it would cool and form crystals as it cooled. And the slower it cooled, the bigger the crystals got. The faster it cooled, the smaller the crystals got. So if you have a very fast cooling molten liquid, it's going to make all these little tiny, very small crystals when it forms. And when you get a big crystal like this, you're basically looking at something that cooled very slowly, which gave the crystal time to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger.
So you're holding something in your hand that basically has been here since the formation of Earth?
Yes. And this is silicon dioxide. This is basically pretty much the same thing sand at the beach is. Most all the sand at the beach is silicon dioxide, which is why you can take sand, melt it, and turn it into glass, which is pretty much what you're doing with quartz.
And for ladies and gentlemen, and that's the end of the show. Everyone just learned something. All right, thanks.
But now both of these, the sort of the brownish yellow and the purple amethyst, both of these are the exact same thing as this. But amethyst, what happens is if you're when it's forming, if your quartz pretty much is not pure silicon dioxide, and it gets other minerals that mix in with it, like iron. One of the main things that makes amethyst purple is it's got a high iron content that's mixed in with the silicon dioxide. And so it gives you different colors. You can get smoky quartz, you can get citrine, which is sort of a yellow-orange. So there are varying colors that you can get, but it's all basically quartz. It's just, now, amethyst is probably one of your biggest value ones because it's used in jewelry and things for the purple. But now, one thing to tell you, if you have a piece of amethyst, do not put it in the sunshine. Sun tends to fade it. Like if you put it on a shelf and the sun shines in a window on it every day, it will get lighter and lighter and lighter, and in several years it'll just be white quartz. It'll get, the sun actually milks the color out of it, and it just gets lighter and
Is it
lighter.
the ultraviolet rays somehow affect the?
Yeah, it's just
the
probably
iron
the
in
radiation and stuff. But actually, another thing that makes the colors is back in the Earth's formation, radiation levels were much higher. So a lot of this stuff irradiated is what gave it its color, which is why we can artificially irradiate some stones and make them much more brilliant and more colorful. We can irradiate them by man and make them. And so sometimes when you go and see jewelry, especially like blue topaz, sometimes you'll see blue topaz and they'll just be super blue and just so bright. Most of the time they've taken basic blue topaz and they've man-made treated it, which gives it a much brighter, but they'll irradiate it and stuff to give it more color.
I wonder what they irradiate it with.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. But I know that's what they do because I've had to ask. But when you're buying jewelry and stuff, you can ask about if a product is a natural product or if it's been modified by man to make it look better,
more rich.
Yeah, and a lot of times if you see a piece of jewelry and it is extremely bright or extremely rich, it's because they've man-made enhanced it. It's still natural, but you just got to be careful with it.
And what was it you said that turned this the amber color? Because I know this was iron.
Yeah, it's just the different colors you get, all of them. It can just be a total mixture of a little bit of iron and then other elements that give it different colors. But I know the one that's more responsible for the purple and amethyst is a iron-rich, basically an element that shouldn't have been there. It should have been that.
So
which is
it's an
pure,
imperfection, really.
Really. I mean, but pure silicon dioxide, which, quartz is a big thing in our electronics, like quartz watches. I mean, when it says a quartz watch, it's not just using the name quartz. It actually has slices of quartz that they, and on our space stuff and in all of our electronics, they take quartz and actually cut it into just tiny little slivers, and they use it in our electronics. So it's quite important for stuff. Now, when you're looking at rocks, when we transition to fossils, some fossils look like rocks. Like this is a piece of petrified wood.
That's wood.
This is wood.
Okay, so me just sitting here, and again, for those who are listening and they can't see, I thought this was, may I touch it? I thought this was a piece of almost like granite or slate or something because it's so smooth and it's so shiny. I thought
it was a piece of petrified wood, which they have sawed off a section to where you can see the wood grain.
Yeah.
And they've cut it off and polished a part to where you can just see it better. And this is the bark on the outside, but it is rock.
This is rock.
It's rock now. What happens is when you're looking at things like this that are rock, but it has like images in it.
Yeah.
Is basically every atom that was organic has been replaced by a mineral atom. So this is just like the wood, but every fiber that was a carbon-based atom has been replaced by a rock atom over years. It's just every atom has been replaced. So you still see the growth rings in the wood.
Right.
You can still see the texture of the bark. This is a piece of petrified wood also, which has not been cut at all. It just...
These are beautiful, but just know that I would have failed your class.
Oh. Well, this one I bought. This one I found.
Oh, you found this?
In eastern North Carolina.
In 1989?
I don't know what year I found it.
88 maybe? So you found this in eastern, you said?
Mm-hmm. In a ditch alongside of a field. But it's an area in eastern North Carolina that is known for petrified wood. And I was in a geology class, actually, and they stopped and told us to go and look up and down this dirt road in the ditches. And pretty much everybody found pieces of petrified wood. But it actually is rock now. I mean, you can still see the woodness of it.
Right.
But every single atom that was organic has been replaced by an inorganic rock molecule or rock atom.
And all that occurred just naturally.
Yes, over long period of time. Now, you also with fossils, you can have impressions, which is what these are. This is an impression in the. Basically, it was laid down. It was probably laid down in mud. The creature was, and over time, it got compressed and compressed and compressed to where it became stone. But the impression of the animal that was in the mud stayed in the stone.
That almost looks like a butterfly or some sort of...
It's a tube worm.
Or a tube worm.
Well, it's a tube. It actually had an animal that comes out of the top of it. It's a tube, and it had an animal that sort of looked like a squid.
Okay.
That stuck out the top of it.
But it's perfect. I mean, this almost looks like it's been digitally placed there.
No.
That's amazing.
And then this is the same thing where you've got a rock with a nautilus-like creature that when it died, it settled in the mud, and then over millions of years, the mud was compressed, the creature's shell was there, it got covered, it got pressed, and then it just left an impression of what it looked like.
It looks like a snail. Mm-hmm. It looks like a snail.
And then this is one where you can see this is a nautilus type creature, but it's millions of years old. This one's actually translucent. If you look at it and the light hits it, you can see red, green, blue colors.
This almost looks like some sort of ancient Egyptian writing or something that's on this thing.
But it's actually
calligraphy.
A nautilus shell that is stone. I mean, it is. If you look here, you can tell. It's just stone.
Oh yeah.
But it still has the pattern and the shape and everything of.
So this
the
means
creature.
something was imprinted on both sides.
Well, that was what its shell looked like.
That's what its shell looked like.
It's just now turned to rock, but it's just intact. And here's the same thing with the impression of a nautilus. And then this is a nautilus, but this is one where it was impressed but it came out in a three-dimensional format as opposed to these that are flat, but it's the same type creature.
For those who can't see, I mean, all these things look like snails, like impressed into. I mean, this is wild. Like, I've never seen anything like this before. It looks man-made, but it's a rock. But it's a rock now.
Well, now these two here are these two. These are trilobites.
We're gonna have to get a better camera for season 2.
I know, but these are trilobites. They were a creature that lived over 365 million years ago, back So probably 500 million to 365 million years ago, these things were probably the dominant life form in the ocean.
What are they called?
Trilobites.
Trilobites.
Yeah, these are both trilobites. This one is, of course, you can see how it's rock, but basically they died, settled to the ocean floor, got covered, pressure, and turned into rock. And it's just as you're digging, the rocks will break and just it just shows what the thing looked like. And this one is still embedded in the rock. It hadn't been cut out. You can see this just looks like a regular rock. And then this one died. It was doing yoga at the time.
It's doing downward dog.
Yes, downward dog. But these are all rock, but they're fossils. Now these are fossils, but they are actually the basically the creatures. This is not exactly the same thing as the rock. These are more fragile, but they are fossils. This is a sea biscuit, sort of like a sand dollar.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, kind of.
I dug this up on the east coast of in New Bern, North Carolina. There's a Martin Marietta rock quarry. It's a limestone quarry.
Okay.
Went there and dug and found these two things. This is a barnacle, but these things they're ocean creatures, but I dug them up an hour's drive from the ocean. Like where New Bern is, it's another hour's drive to get to the ocean. But you dig in the ground and you find these ocean creatures that are fossilized and are just right there in the dirt. And you can also have impressions of plants. These two have like fern impressions on them. And again, the fern fronds land in the mud, get covered up, and it just makes an impression of what it is. Same thing here. It's got a small fish, and it dies, and the body falls down and on the mud, and it gets covered up, and it makes these just an impression of what the fish look like. You can even see little bones and stuff in it.
Yeah,
just the
it's
impressions.
almost just like one of those like little silverfish.
Yep, but they're
Sure,
just
I
a
killed them in
very
the kitchen.
just very small little fish, and you can actually see its spine and so forth in it. Again, millions of years old.
So now, where did you buy this? Did you find this?
This particular one I bought.
Okay.
Some things I buy, some things I find.
And are things like this fairly inexpensive, pretty expensive? I mean,
something
you don't
like
necessarily have to say
that
exactly,
is something like that's going to be $5 to $8.
Okay.
Something like this is going to be $60.
Oh wow.
Something like this is going to be like $45, $50.
Okay.
Some impression of a fern leaf probably be $8 to $10. Now this is a shark's tooth.
That's
not
huge.
One that, well, actually it's huge, but for a megalodon, it actually is sort of medium size.
That's a lot bigger than the tooth that I can buy at Wings in Myrtle Beach.
True.
On my necklace.
Yes. I actually took students fossil digging at New Bern at the fossil quarry, and the limestone quarry. It's just they're there for the limestone, we're there for the fossils. So whereas they're digging there and just grinding millions of fossils up.
Really?
Oh yeah, because they just are digging the limestone out. They're after the limestone,
right?
And it just gets dug up, sent through a thing, and just pulverated into limestone powder.
So stuff like this is being churned up daily.
Well, especially stuff like this. But yeah, these things are in that, and unfortunately, I never found one myself. I think I went there 3 times and dug, and I had students that found them. Never could talk the students into letting me have them. But I had one student, her name was Tanya. She actually was standing on it. She was using it. where you dig, it's sandy.
Yeah.
It's limestone. And so you're digging on this bank. Well, the kids and me, you would dig you a foothold out. Like you would dig you you dig you steps.
Right.
And then you would go up and say, well, a lot of times it would be a little loose and sandy. So the kids would find things and would sit. Like where they were going to stand, they would put like a rock on it to sort of stabilize it.
Right.
She was standing on one, and she didn't realize what she had. It was a little dirty and stuff, but she found one of these, and you can see how big this one is to my hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's basically the size of, mid palm up to your fingertips.
Yes. Okay. The tooth she found went from here, and you couldn't see my hand at all. I mean, when I held it, it was huge. I mean, it was like way bigger than this one. And you find them smaller than this one, but it went all the way across and all the way up out here, and I could hold it in my hand and not see any of my hand.
Is there a way that scientists can date shark teeth? Like, could someone?
Well, yeah, and they can. I mean, it just depends. Anything that ever lived, if it's got organic material, you can carbon date it.
Okay.
But carbon dating is only good. Like you could carbon date woolly mammoths.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's good for probably 20,000 years. But when you get back to dinosaurs and stuff, you can't. You have to measure radiation. And what they usually do is you find a tooth in a rock. Okay.
Like that literally is a rock with a tooth hanging out of it.
Yes. Shark's tooth in a rock. And you can take a chip of the rock and you can date the age of the rock.
Okay.
And since the tooth is in the rock, you presume that the tooth is the same age as your rock because it's in it.
Right.
So if the rock right there is 400 million years old, then you presume the fossil stuck in it is 400 million years old.
Because this was not a rock when this got stuck in it. This
No,
was
it
a soft
mud
formation.
or sand.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sucker's sharp.
Yes. Yes. And it's got little, see the little side, this tooth, it actually has little side teeth that come out. And I mean, it's part of the design of that tooth. But yeah, it's cool. But that's the way they can do some fossils, is you figure out how the rock is that the fossil is in, and then you're able to figure out, well, if this is stuck in this rock, then it's got to have been. But they do radiation, because the mud and the rock and everything, the sun's been shining on it, so there's a set amount of radiation that is in there. But
so, like, do they have, like with anything else, like with old cars or anything that people collect, they have conventions? Do they have fossil conventions or rock or gem conventions or whatnot?
Rock, mineral, and fossil shows. All you got to do is go to the internet, type in rock, fossil, mineral show 2018, and it'll give you shows all over the country. If you live in a particular place, and you're looking more for North Carolina, then you can type in North Carolina and it'll show you where all the shows are. There's shows in Franklin, North Carolina, up in the mountains. There's shows in Winston-Salem, I know.
Would people be surprised at how many people attend a show?
Oh,
like,
yeah, they're always crowded, especially the one up in the mountains. The ones up at Franklin and the gym area of the mountains, they have big shows, and you have, and they go for like a week, and they have people out in big fields selling out of the back of their truck and stuff, and they have a big arena and people are in there selling, but they'll have people on sides of the road. They'll have tents set up all over the place, and you can go and look and buy. And a lot of times you can get them cheaper if you can find people that have gone out and dug them and are selling them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the shows are fun, and they've got to where they've added, besides the rocks, the minerals, they've added a pretty good size jewelry contingent to the whole picture. So
that makes sense.
Instead of it just being raw rocks and minerals, which I'm more interested in, you'll go and there'll be amethyst rings, amethyst jewelry, topaz. They've got to where they take beads. They make rock beads.
Yeah.
So there's a big bead market. So there's a lot of rock beads. They drill holes in them, and people buy the rock beads to make necklaces and bracelets and stuff out of. So they've added a pretty big contingent of jewelry to it.
Is it possible for people to fake this stuff? Like fake fossil? I mean, I'm sure there is, but there's probably a way to fake anything.
Sure,
Because if I was looking at this, I'd be like, there ain't no way that was a
Well, I've got a much bigger one out in the car. I didn't bring it in.
But,
I've got one with these on them.
Yeah.
I've got one out there that's like a foot by a foot. But I didn't bring it in because it was bigger. I just brought my 2 small ones in. But yeah, I mean, you pretty much can fake whatever. I mean, I can with my students, we used to take sand and put in a container, and you put the sand in, smooth it down, wet it.
Yeah.
And we'd give seashells. And you take a seashell, just like this is a barnacle or this is a sand dollar. I mean, you could take a seashell, press it in the sand real hard, and then bring it up, and then you can pour like plaster Paris in there and let it dry, and then when you pull it out, you have basically that.
A man-made seashell.
A man-made fossil-looking like thing, because that's what it is. I mean, most of the time, you either have impressions, which are like the leaves are
right.
impressions. These are impressions here. But you can have actual remains like this and the shark tooth and this. I mean, this is still, it's rock, but I mean, you can still see the sand dollar shape on the top of it. I can tell it, got crushed in at some point. But yeah, when you go to the beach and you dig and you find, basically you're finding fossils when you find those little black shark teeth at the beach.
Right.
Because if you find, like this one's black and this one's white or cream. And so I was like, well, why are they different color? It just sort of depends on what minerals they got buried in. Like
that determines the color of the tooth.
What the tooth ends up coming out. What minerals they're exposed to for the millions of years that they're buried, which is why this tooth is tan and this tooth is black. But at the beach, most of the time you're going to find black shark's teeth. But the black shark's teeth at the beach are pretty much fossils. When you go along and you see all these people and they've got 30 black shark teeth that they found looking for shark's teeth on the beach, they're fossils. They're just fossils that
Is there a technique to find the shark teeth at the beach, or and a lot of people like to go out for sand dollars and dig with their toes, like my mom does that.
Yeah.
She's pretty. I don't know how she does. She's almost like a sand dollar whisperer.
Yeah.
I don't know how she does that.
But yeah, you scoot for sand dollars because they're going to be sitting right on top, and they like to bury themselves under this. Like they've got little hairy tentacle-like little things.
Yeah.
And so they'll sit on the sand and they'll just sort of do this and get a little sand covering over to where they're sort of hidden.
Mm-hmm.
So you just sort of scoot your feet instead of picking them up and stepping. Yeah, you scoot and when you hit it, it'll pop up.
Oh.
And I guess it's sort of how you dig for clams.
The only thing I can get, or I seem to find, is shell splinters in my feet when I do that.
Oh, that wouldn't be good.
No. So guess what I don't do?
No, you don't shuffle.
No, there's no shuffling.
Oh.
No, I don't like walking
Well, if you
barefoot.
go right along the edge where the waves are coming up, going out, coming up, going out, it pretty much is filtering through the sand for you. And the shark's teeth, a lot of people find their shark's teeth just walking on the beach. Mm-hmm. They'll just walk right where the tide line is.
The tide
line's
And
they'll just look for the little black triangles. and people find them all the time. Now, you can sit in the sand and just dig a hole, and just sort of going through looking for it. I mean, I found them that way plenty of times too. But going to some of the limestone quarries, you sort of have to look for a limestone quarry in your area, but call them. Mm-hmm. Like we went to Martin Marietta, I called. You have to fill out some paperwork. You have to sign a form that says if you fall off a cliff, it's not their fault. You wear a hard hat.
So it's a legit,
yeah, you have to get permission for them to let you come in and dig. And usually they have a place away from where they're working set aside for prospectors. And so they'll take you over and they'll say, you can dig here. And so you just dig. And of course, if you dig high up near you're going to find newer fossils. Like I found a deer vertebra. It was fossilized, but it was like feet from the top of the dirt, like where the plants and the trees were growing. Because you got this cliff. So the farther up the cliff you go, the more today you are. Mm-hmm. Like when you're right where the plant stuff are growing, you're at today. But if you come down 2 feet, you're 20,000 years ago. If you come down 5 feet, you're...
But now you speaking of fossils and whatnot, there's probably, because you live on a farm that's been in your family for how long?
Since 1750.
1750. What's the story again of how your family was able to acquire the land?
My ancestor, Joseph Davidson, came from Ireland. He showed up in Pennsylvania is the next time you see him. And then he was the Scotch-Irish Presbyterian migration. Mm-hmm. So he came over, and apparently he came over before 1750. He arrived where we live now in 1750. So I'm not sure how long it took him to get from Ireland to Pennsylvania to Iredell County in North Carolina. But he got here in 1750, and the governor representing the King of England gave him 600 acres to work, and we still live on part of that 600 acres today.
From 1750 to now, there is still a piece of land that was given to your family by the King of England.
Yes, to work. And then that ancestor and his sons fought in the Revolutionary War, and 2 of his sons were killed in a battle on the same day in Lincolnton, called the Battle at Ramseur Mill in Lincolnton. Mm-hmm. But they were fighting a group of loyalists, and somehow or another, both of the brothers got killed at the same battle. But our ancestor survived, and of course we're descendant from him. Now he did have another brother that survived, which I ran into some people from Tennessee who were Davidsons, and they were trying to trace their family history, and they ended up in my driveway. And I went out and was sort of like...
Oh, so you weren't in Tennessee seeking them out? Or
no, they were in North Carolina. They were trying to trace their roots for being Davidsons.
They came to you?
Yes.
So you didn't find them at the Cracker Barrel in
Wilkesboro? I found them in my driveway.
Oh, wow.
And I went out to see if I could help, and they told me what they were doing, and I said they were trying to trace the Davidson family, and they were looking for the home place. And I said, well, you're pretty much there. I said the home place actually is that way a little ways. It's the next road over is where the house was.
Oh, okay.
But the land they were on was part of that 600 acres that house supported. And but what had happened was that we figured out was our ancestors, Joseph, or the son. Joseph's the one who came, and he had a son, Joseph.
Okay.
And the 2 sons that got killed, and he had a son, Alexander. Well, Joseph and Alexander survived the Revolutionary War. Don't know what Alexander did, but Alexander, after the war, apparently he helped somebody that had land in Tennessee, or helped save a family in Tennessee.
Okay.
Because after the Revolutionary War, he came back, got his family, and they all went to Tennessee because apparently he had been given land in Tennessee, and so he was going to go to Tennessee, and that's where the Davidsons in Tennessee came from. And so they had made their way to us, which is where their ancestor, Alexander Davidson, had originated from. So
that's fascinating.
Yes.
It's also interesting that those Davidsons in Tennessee, I would say, have a fascination with is it genealogy or family tree? Okay. Genealogy. What I find interesting about that is that you have a fascination with genealogy. I mean, you've researched your family further back than probably, at least I would fair to say, any living member of your family. Well, but it's just interesting that that is obviously a DNA trait somewhere.
Yeah. But I knew Alexander existed, and they knew Alexander.
Because I can assure you, my family's not researching further than what their phone is in their back. Yeah, my sister, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, the Davidsons, I've only got them back, from what I've done, I've only got them back to the person who came over from Ireland.
Right.
Which is Joseph. And I know he got here in 1750. I think I would have to go to Ireland to trace him anymore.
That could be a trip worth making.
It would. So,
maybe a family trip.
The James side of the family, I've traced back further. I don't know why I had more access to them. When you're doing Ancestry.com, you basically find a person, and there's a button to hit.
Right.
That if you're looking at a person, it's like their parents. So you can hit, and it'll tell you who that person's parents were. Mm-hmm. Well, then if you go to that person, then you can hit the parent button. And on some people, you run out. Like, you get to somebody and you hit parent, and it's like unknown.
There's nothing there.
Yeah, and that makes it a little tricky. But on the Jameses, I actually have gotten quite a ways back, and I've got another family member who...
Well, it's possible, too, people who are coming over here may have changed their name for one reason or another. Changed the spelling or flip-flop, or just totally changed it altogether.
That's happened in my family. But that's what I did find with the Jameses, if what I have found is correct, is when I got back to 1492...
Were they with Columbus?
No, but it was 1492 was the day, and I got back to an ancestor whose last name wasn't James, and I'm like, because I had a James, and I hit parent, and the person that came up as parent wasn't a James, so I got to researching that, and this person was in like Norway, and his name was Jacob Van Hostrick. And from what I gather from the research I did is Jacob Van Hostrick, Van, V-A-N, not you know,
Von.
you hear Von?
Yeah, V-O-N.
But he was V-A-N, Van Hostrick. But from what I gather, he left Norway and went to England. And apparently they didn't like saying Van Hostrick in England. And apparently it was an okay name while you were in Norway, but in England it's like people who come to America and they Americanize their name.
Right.
So from what I'm gathering is when he got to England, he Englished his name up. Since his first name was Jacob, and Jacob means James in English,
okay,
he changed his name to Jacob James, and then from then on we were Jameses. But prior to him, we were Van Hostricks. Like my grandmother was a Nance, German, N-A-N-T-Z. But we have cousin Nances in the family who Americanized the name and changed it to N-A-N-C-E.
C-E.
Yeah. So N-A-N-C-E Nances and N-A-N-T-Z Nances I mean, we're in the same family,
Would have
but
been interesting
the
when
last
they
names
changed the
changed.
spelling.
Yeah, but from what I found was he just took his first name, Jacob, which in English, Jacob means James, and he just changed him to Jacob James.
And he was from Norway.
Yes. But that was 600 years ago.
It's still fascinating that there's somewhere in a book written somewhere from 600, 500, 400 years ago that this story.
Yeah. So, but now I've got a cousin who has traced back even farther, and she says she's gone far enough back to where we're actually
Jesus' first cousin?
No, but
That's pretty far.
Charlemagne. Charlemagne is in our family ancestry tree. So
who is Charlemagne?
Charlemagne was a very important character in English history. I don't totally know. I'd have to look up Charlemagne.
For those at home, look up Charlemagne, because I
Yeah.
know usually when there's that last drunk girl at the bar, we call her Charlene.
Charlene.
All right. Who's old Charlene with the broken heel?
But I know she was.
Are you Googling it?
I was going to sort of look and see.
Maybe in season 2, we'll be able to afford a production assistant, and they can sit over there in the corner and Google. And by production assistant, I mean Kristen. If she ever listens to our show.
Yeah, I was trying to look to see if I could pull up something real quick.
So I was going more towards how are you the fossils and stuff that you probably have found on the farm throughout the 600 years. There have to be a lot of arrowheads, but and stuff like that, or just tons of stuff. But this one
a half
even
mile,
better direction.
A half mile from our house, which is on the Davidson property. There's a field that goes up from a creek, and it used to be farmed. Ever since I've lived, it's been a grass pasture, but it's a hill, and at the bottom of it's a creek. And my father, when he was a boy, apparently they farmed that, and he had a whole shoebox full of arrowheads, axe handle, axe. He had all kinds of Indian rock things that he found walking behind the horse plow that was plowed up on that hill, because apparently there was an Indian settlement there.
Oh.
And a cousin of mine found a quartz arrowhead. Don't know how they ever cut that, but it was a quartz arrowhead, had an air bubble in the middle of it. And she found it in that creek. And it actually got researched. I mean, people in the know had come to look at this arrowhead because it wasn't made like normal arrowheads. You know, usually it's flint and stuff, and they chip the rock, but this was a hard quartz, clear, actually had like a bubble in the middle of it. And but the design of it wasn't from the Indians around here. So the thing that finally got thought that maybe how this arrowhead arrived at our place was that an animal had been shot with it, and that animal had traveled from like the Mississippi area
long way
all the way to here and died. And when it decomposed, it deposited the arrowhead
or
here.
I have a theory.
What?
From part 1. Aliens. Aliens shot it from another dimension, and it traveled through a wormhole here.
Can you imagine
and died
cutting an
on your
arrowhead?
farm? No.
I mean, quartz on the hardness scale is a 7
out of
10.
10?
Diamond's 10.
Oh wow. Okay.
But I mean, to actually chip it and cut it to make an arrowhead would not have been an easy task. Would not be easy. It would not be an easy task to do. But yet,
somebody did it.
Yes, somebody did.
But it's just like the whole, and I think, that probably would be a better topic for another time that we'll get into on a different episode. But the Egyptians and the pyramids, and how was there enough knowledge in the technology to build the pyramids thousands of years ago? And there's even something coming out now. There's a guy who's kind of sticking his neck out there, and I forget his name now, but he's saying like the Sphinx are actually 4,000 to 5,000 years older because of watermarks.
Yeah.
So everything that we have known up until now.
And as impressive as the pyramids are now, they looked way better back in the day. I mean, now they've got all these steps and everything on them, but they had a whole nother covering of rock on them.
Go ahead and say they had an elevator.
No elevator, but they did. There has been a whole outer layer of rock that used to be on them that is not there anymore. And so, I mean, as impressive as they are now, they actually were much more impressive back however many thousands of years ago they were made, when they were in their pristine form. They are phenomenal. I mean, it's amazing to figure out how such things were done. But it's just like, I don't know. Sometimes I think that the ancients, we think they were very primitive, but sometimes I think they had equipment we didn't know about.
But where is it?
I know.
It's ground up out there in the limestone.
I know. But I mean,
factory.
Like the big, tall, like the Washington Monument type things.
Right.
I mean, those things were huge, and they're one solid piece of rock. So they've cut them, did all their little images on them and everything, but yet they were able to stand those things up, and they're still standing. I mean, most of them, there's some that have fallen, but I mean, they did such a good job. These things are still standing. I mean, we had that little earthquake a couple of years ago, that 5-point something that hit Mineral, Virginia.
Yeah.
And it damaged the Washington Monument, and they had to close it down for months for repair.
I remember that. Trinity and Greg actually still have a crack in one of their windows.
Yeah, from that earthquake. That's cool. But you just think, with earthquakes and hurricanes and rain and wind and sandstorms and all, it's just amazed that the things have survived as much as they have survived.
I'm amazed at how much stuff you know. That's what amazes me.
There's a lot in there.
There is a lot in there. And I think what we'll do is, Mark, we're going to have you come back and talk about additional things that I find interesting outside of the fossils and the planets and stuff like that, because you, sir, are a wealth of knowledge.
I do know quite a bit.
And if anybody has any questions they want to ask or comments they want to leave, always feel free to do so in the comment section below. But Mark, I won't keep you anymore. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Bye.